Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, February the 21st, 2025. Today I want to talk about the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky. I mean, I do talk about him every now and then, but I don't actually think I've looked at his chart for a couple of months, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to have an update, particularly given the fact that he's just had this, or is having in the process of having this spat with Donald Trump, the US president. But anyway, that's something I'm going to be looking at the end of this video. First of all, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Friday, February the 21st. So here is the chart for today, set for noon, New York time. By the way, if you happen to like this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be extremely grateful if you were to become a subscriber. So looking at this chart, we have the moon in Sagittarius. Moon is at 14:16 Sagittarius, noon, New York time today. And so that means that all day long, the moon is going to be in Sagittarius. It doesn't matter what your location is. It is a Sagittarian day, and that feels good, maybe, to have the moon in Sagittarius. You know, the moon in Sagittarius, it works pretty well in this sign. The moon is able to express itself. The moon in Sagittarius can be very honest, can be very blunt. It says what it thinks. It never means any offense, moon in Sagittarius, but sometimes it can be a little bit tactless. But, you know, if there's any day for expressing ourselves, for telling people what we feel, then now might be our chance. And the moon in Sagittarius, it's making a trine to Venus and an opposition to Jupiter. And it's also making a square to Mercury. Now that moon opposition Jupiter does indicate a little bit of excessiveness. We might take something too far. You know, Jupiter in Gemini, quite a verbal position for Jupiter. So we might say more than we have to. So perhaps with moon opposition Jupiter, we should say what we have to say, but don't feel we have to take things too far. Also, moon is trine Venus. Moon trine Venus, nice aspect. And from a relationship point of view, that should really sort of help smooth things over. But really, we do have a kind of a T-square going on here, because the moon makes an opposition to Jupiter, but then it makes a square to Mercury. So you see moon is square Mercury, Mercury is square Jupiter. Mercury was exactly square Jupiter, I think it was yesterday. So that emphasizes the point that there is a lot to be said, and moon opposition Jupiter is the challenge to do something, the challenge to be optimistic and to think positively, and that's what we want to do, and Mercury is the way to do it. And it's really helped by the fact that Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. So the right words can really change things for the better. Wrong words can cause a lot of damage. So in a way, there is a certain element of choice there. And as far as other aspects, we do have two minor aspects involving the sun. So the sun is at 3 degrees 19 Pisces, and it is semi-sextile Pluto. So Sun semi-sextile Pluto may be an aspect that makes us think about how much control we have. You know, how much control do we really have? And we might feel that we actually don't have enough control, and that we want more control. And so the challenge, is, what do we do about it? And we have to, amongst everything going on today, and there's a lot going on today, but in a fairly minor way. Look, there's lots of little things going on. we want to attend to this thing, that thing. But amongst all of that, we are challenged to assert ourselves, to be in control, to be the ones creating the change, and that might be how the Sun how the Sun semi-sextile Pluto is working. But I don't want to, give the impression that it's a completely major day. We have had some big aspects recently. We recently had Sun sesquiquadrate Mars, but that Sun sesquiquadrate Mars is moving on. So, perhaps there isn't a great deal to say. Now, the Moon is in Sagittarius for everyone, and this is sort of illustrated when we look at the chart for noon today, but set for Sydney, Australia. So you can see that the Moon is at 6 Sagittarius. So it doesn't matter where you are, Moon is in Sagittarius all day long. And if you are in Australia or New Zealand, perhaps you won't feel the Moon opposition Jupiter as strongly as you might if you're in the US or in Europe, but perhaps instead you might be more aware of the moon square Sun. Moon square Sun, that is a reminder that it is a last quarter moon. I mean, all of us should be aware that it's last quarter moon, whether we're in the US or Australia or New Zealand. But perhaps if you're in Australasia, the fact that it is that last quarter moon is going to be clearer. And the last quarter moon is about a sense that something has to be done because the lunar cycle is coming to an end. If we don't sort it out now, don't sort it out by the end of a month, then it's quite possible that we will have missed our chance. Turning to the heliocentric picture, where we put the Sun at the center of the solar system, I'm not sure if there's a great deal to report. Well, it's all about Mercury, isn't it? And Mercury is making a trine to Mars, and it's making a trine to Venus. So we had a Venus-Mars conjunction. It's still there. You can see that there's a heliocentric Venus-Mars conjunction in Leo. Venus at 15 Leo, Mars at 1242 Leo. And Mercury is making the trine to Mars, and it's making a trine to Venus. So Mercury is recreating that Venus-Mars conjunction. It's reactivating it. And if we make the effort, we can perhaps harness that aspect. Mercury aspecting those two planets can be about expressing ourselves in a way that gets attention, that makes us seem important, and maybe makes us also seem attractive. So the things we say can make us attractive, especially if we can capture the spirit of the times. That's always important, especially when you're dealing with a heliocentric chart. When you're dealing with a heliocentric chart, it is somewhat impersonal, and it's about more sort of collective forces. And if we can tune into the collective, but also tune into the people we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we have a chance perhaps to communicate in a way that is very persuasive. So that's the heliocentric picture. I probably missed something, but I don't think there's a great deal else going on. And now I want to look at things from the viewpoint of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, February the 21st, 2025. Aries. The moon is very much in Sagittarius, and the moon is making a trine to Venus, and Venus is in Aries. And so because of that, I think that you're going to be quite a sociable, charismatic person, and there's something about you that is exciting. And right now people want excitement. They want to look at things from a new perspective, and they probably want suggestions. Some people are not very good at working out what to do next. They want someone else to help them out, to come up with ideas, and to perhaps be the one who starts the ball rolling. And that may be down to you. So if you feel that things are a little bit slow, that no one knows quite what to do, then Aries, that might be your chance to show everyone, what is possible. Now, Aries, you might find that to be a little bit annoying. Aries can be frustrated with other people's inaction, and it can be a little bit annoying. Poor Aries always has to take the initiative. Poor Aries has to make things happen. But I don't think it's so difficult. With the Moon making that trine to Venus. Venus, remember, is in mutual to the Sun, and so by exaltation. So you are someone who is full of life, full of action, at least in a relative sense. Certainly a lot more than a lot of other people, and you don't have to stick to familiar ground, and that's a reminder maybe that Mars is it's now Friday, and Mars goes stationary direct on Monday, just got a few days left, and so you're feeling that now is a time that you want to do something, and perhaps some things have got a little bit boring, are getting a little bit boring, and so Moon trine Venus just encourages you to just do something different and to maybe do some exploring. You're not going to entirely forget your own security needs. Mars is still in Cancer, but you're able to provide some leadership, provide some direction, and it could be that you are the first person to do something, and you're an example. And once you set an example, you show, you demonstrate that things are okay. I mean, it's that example is I don't know, guinea pigs. There were some guinea pigs. Not my guinea pigs, but it's kind of guinea pigs that are around, and these traumatized guinea pigs that I've been observing, and these two guinea pigs were completely traumatized, and what they needed was a leader. What they're really looking for is another guinea pig to really demonstrate to them that everything is okay. And that's with guinea pigs. They're social animals. You should never ever keep a guinea pig on its own, and they need that. They need interaction, and so maybe you regard a lot of other people as being like frightened guinea pigs, and they need an assertive. They need a new guinea pig in there, an assertive guinea pig who can show them that everything is okay, and maybe that's your role if you take a guinea pig analogy. And so, other people might be traumatized. For whatever reason, they might not really be traumatized, but they need to be shown that everything is okay, that nothing bad is going to happen. There's no bird of prey that's going to swoop down and eat them. It's just not going to happen. And as far as relationships are concerned, Moon trine Venus, that looks good in terms of getting on with people, especially as Venus is in that mutual reception aspect with the Sun, and so Moon trine Venus, you're showing other people possibilities, and they might not be able to come up with their own ideas, but you come up with the ideas, and it does make you an exciting, interesting, and attractive person. And new relationships and old should really prosper because of that moon trine Venus. Something fell on the floor just then. I don't know whether you heard it, but and then we've got the moon is opposition Jupiter. don't overdo it, and don't be sidetracked by useless information. Just one final point. You need to keep in mind, Aries, the bigger vision, and don't get caught up in details, that factual details perhaps, that you don't need to worry about, right now. Maybe you'll have to worry about them a bit later, but not today. Taurus, the moon is making a trine to Venus today, and that's actually quite a good aspect. It makes you feel looked after, and you kind of also feel that you're in the right place. I mean, things may not be wonderfully exciting, but it's all okay, and there's not much you have to worry about. And wherever you are, you know how to fit in. And fitting in doesn't mean being the center of attention. I don't think in many cases you actually want to be the center of attention. It's not what you're craving, but you just want to feel that everything is okay, and that very much is how you feel. And there might be a certain preparatory sense to what's happening today. You can pick up whatever's going on. You can observe, and you don't have to always be right at the center of things. And in fact, it might be a time where you can just sort of fade out and sort of come back in when you feel like it. So there's a lot of choice there. Now, that Venus is in mutual reception to the Sun by exaltation, and this mutual reception does give you a certain sociability, just a natural sociability. It's not anything you have to push, but you just know what to say, and you know how to behave, and at the same time you know how to defend yourself, and you can defend yourself not through force of arms or by saying anything that is aggressive. You can just just move out of the way when you see things happening that you don't really want to get involved with. Yet the moon is in Sagittarius, and with moon in Sagittarius, there is a relationship between moon in Sagittarius and the sign Taurus. What is the link between moon in Sagittarius and Taurus? Now, they seem to be completely different energies, but there is one word that I would use, one adjective that I would use to describe both moon in Sagittarius and Taurus, and that word is blunt. And I think I used this word blunt when I was describing moon in Sagittarius at the beginning of this piece. And they're blunt for different reasons. Taurus is blunt because Taurus wants to state the obvious and wants to be very grounded about it, and just says it the way it is, perhaps in a rather gruff kind of way. And these are the facts. Sagittarius is blunt because Sagittarius is sort of going sort of all over the place, just wants to say something. Why not? That's the way it is. That's the truth. Let's just get it out, and then just move on. So different motivations here. But when you've got moon in Sagittarius anyway, and you're dealing with Taurians, then that moon in Sagittarius might actually encourage you to be blunt. And you might be blunt actually as a way of protecting yourself. If things are getting a little bit out of hand and you're feeling nervous or that things have gone too far, just saying the right thing, or maybe it's the wrong thing, you just say it and it gets an immediate response, and the response might not be positive, but at least you've shifted things, and at least you have forced people to respond to you. But maybe you don't have to, and you could say, well, the less contact you have with other people, the better, but also you have a natural sociability at the moment because of that Sun-Venus mutual reception by exaltation. And as far as money is concerned, Moon opposition Jupiter. And Moon is actually, Moon opposition Jupiter, there is a square with Mercury. And Mercury, Moon is square Mercury, Mercury is square Jupiter. That might suggest arguments or disagreements about money or material objects, about who owes what, who's agreed to do this, who's agreed to do that, who should pay for this, who should pay for that. That kind of thing could come out into the open. And these kind of concerns, you'd possibly like to keep them to yourself. You might want to just brood about them without saying anything, but there may be a feeling that something has to be said. And with Mercury making the square to Moon, Mercury square Jupiter, it may be a good time, Taurus, to be blunt about money, or who owns what, who owes what. And by saying something very clearly, you'll get a response, and you may be able to resolve a long-standing issue. And it may not be a financial issue. I mean, it may be a very practical issue where people haven't been open and honest in the past, but now maybe you can start to get it, out into the open. Gemini, other people continue to be important. They can't be ignored. You might like to ignore them, but I don't think that is really an option. You have to consider what other people want. That doesn't mean to say that you have to give them what they want, but you at least have to know what they're looking for and be ready to respond. And the Moon is in Sagittarius. It's in your opposite sign, and the Moon is making a square to Mercury. And that Moon square Mercury could be a little bit stressful in terms of your various interactions. You might not be happy with the way certain people are behaving. You may not even feel you understand it, and even if you do understand it, you might not sympathize. So your first reaction might be not to be sympathetic, and to just take the view that you're just dealing with difficult people, and you need to get your way. Now, I don't think that approach is necessary, because Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. Just because people are behaving in a way that you don't like, and that's especially the case if you're working today in your working environment, but it could be in other ways. If people are behaving in a way you don't like, or you want to change the way they behave, then you can actually do something about it. And Mercury is Mercury in Pisces, making a square to Jupiter, square to the Moon. Mercury being on the T of a T square means that the resolution of a matter is to clearly state what you think and what you believe, but do it in a way that is somewhat sensitive. And this is actually supported by the picture in the heliocentric chart. So in the heliocentric chart, we have got a Venus-Mars conjunction, but Mercury makes a trine to that Venus-Mars conjunction. Mercury is in a heliocentrically a very fast-moving aspect, so a fast-moving planet, and it makes that trine to Venus-Mars. And if you understand the cosmos, if you understand the way the universe is moving, you'll find that there is actually a way to say what's on your mind, to say what you're thinking about, but to do it in a way which is very clever, and also which aligns with the universe. And you can just say something that is obvious, that no one can really disagree with. And once you say it, and you get the wording right, and you make the most of the situation, people will just accept your view, and you can get your way. But the important thing is not to make a fight about it. I don't actually think that that is necessary. And what you mustn't do, Gemini, is give the impression that anything is important to you. As soon as you give the impression that something matters, that you're taking it personally, then the problems start. But if you just go through the day giving the impression that you're just being objective, you don't really care which way things are going, even if deep down you really care. But if you give that impression, then I think that's going to give you, the best chance of, being successful and ensuring that your way and your viewpoint prevails. And finishing up with relationships, I talked about Mercury Jupiter being in mutual reception, and that's helping relationships. Not just today. It's throughout this whole period while Mercury and Jupiter are in mutual reception, and Mercury and Jupiter are actually in mutual reception for quite a long time. And we shouldn't forget that Mercury, it does go into Aries at the beginning of March, but then it leaves Aries and goes back into Pisces at the end of March. So on and off for the next couple of months, you've got this mutual reception between Mercury and Jupiter, which is going to help relationships. And then today you've got the Moon aspecting both Mercury and Jupiter, so that does give you a chance to really resolve things. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% easy, but you just make some small effort to understand what's bothering people, and then as I said, come over as being just ever so slightly disinterested. Even if you are completely interested, just coming over as being a bit disinterested, as if you don't really care, and there's nothing that you're prepared to lose your head over. Then if you take that approach, then I think overall that puts you in quite a strong position. Cancer, you have your own way of doing things. That's always been the case, and your way is the best way. I mean, it might not be best for other people. If you tell someone that there's only one way of doing things, and it's not necessarily the case that they should follow your advice, but your particular approach is absolutely fine, and you shouldn't feel that really anything needs to be changed. And there will be distractions, and there'll be suggestions that maybe a change is good, that you haven't got things right, that there are certain key pieces of information you've ignored, and maybe you should go back to the drawing board. Yeah, there might be that piece of advice. You might even start coming to that conclusion yourself. You might be thinking, well, have you really got it right? Maybe you haven't. Maybe you need to make some changes. But I don't think you need to make any changes. As I say, they say, if it's not broken, then it doesn't need to be fixed. So you could say, Cancer, that you should just carry on, and everything is fine, and nothing more has to be said. But the Moon is making an opposition to Jupiter, and it is a square, making a square to Mercury. So I do see that as the possibility of irritation. Something probably from outside is just annoying you, is trying to get under your skin, and it's potentially upsetting your peace of mind, and you want to respond. I mean, you almost feel that you have to respond. But the question is, Cancer, is it really necessary? And if today you find yourself feeling angry or even a bit helpless because you might feel you haven't got things right, that you need to do things in a different way, just don't take it too seriously. Just get over it. It's just a passing obstacle. It's a figment of your imagination, and as I said, just keep going. And in the end, things are going to be fine. Now, the Moon does make that opposition to Jupiter and square Mercury, which I've just said could be quite an irritating influence. But also, the Moon is making a trine to Venus, and that trine between the Moon and Venus makes you out to be someone who is conscientious. That's very clear. As soon as people notice what you're doing, they see how you're going about it, then you come over as someone who is actually quite sensible, but sensible in a way that is not boring. Sensible in a way that should be emulated. Some people want to emulate your sensibleness. It seems that you're in control, that it seems that you have understood things. Now, you may not feel that you're in control. You may still feel that you've got many questions, but that is the impression you can give. And that moon trine Venus is really going to help. And not only can you be sensible, but you can give the impression that you're someone who is open to ideas and actually has a lot of different ideas, that you've thought of all possibilities. There are people out there, aren't there, who seem to have covered everything. There's nothing they don't know about particular subjects, and that person actually could be you at the moment. You give that kind of impression, and as a result, you're someone who can be trusted, and can be trusted to just make sure everything is fine. So if other people are facing problems, or if you're working, there have been problems at work, or something is a mess, you're just the person to come in and sort everything out and come up with new solutions at the same time. And that is very much going to be appreciated, and you can do it in a way that isn't overly dramatic, but also gets people's attention. And so in your own quiet way, you can be charismatic, and above all, you are going to be trusted. Leo, there is an interesting aspect today with Pluto. The Sun is 30 degrees from Pluto, so there is a semi-sextile between the Sun and Pluto. And semi-sextiles are often disregarded. They're a minor aspect. Do we have to really worry about them? But I think that we should. In fact, it could be argued that the Sun sextile Pluto is the most important aspect of the day. And so if we try to sort of conceptualize this Sun semi-sextile Pluto, we can say, well, the Sun is you. And that's the Sun in Pisces in mutual reception by exaltation with Venus, and that's you. You kind of know what's happening. You feel that you have an increasing knowledge about what's going on, and you're getting this knowledge from numerous sources. It's your intuition, it's what you can see with your own eyes, and it's also your feelings. You are quite emotionally sensitive at the moment, and so things are going fine. It seems that you've made this transition from the Sun in Aquarius to the Sun being in Pisces. But there's something that you don't quite get. There's something bothering you. It's It's something that is out of reach. It's almost in reach, but it's actually out of reach. And you don't quite understand it, and it's playing games with you. And is it a figment of your imagination? Is it just some aspect of yourself that you don't fully understand, that you haven't really integrated? Or is it an external situation that is very real, that in some way is frustrating your progress? Or maybe you feel that something on the outside is actually it's necessary to bring it into the inside in order to make the most of everything you've got. So there is a psychological dimension today, and you're trying to incorporate something, and it's not 100% easy. And this semi-sextile would not exist if it wasn't possible for you to resolve it. And the resolution ultimately is about taking something that you feel uncomfortable with and taking it and looking at it and realizing that it actually can be part of your experience, and it can strengthen you. So I know all that sounds vague, but in a way it has to be vague. If I was completely precise about it, then I would be ignoring your individuality. Now I could say Sun semi-sextile Pluto represents another person that you have to deal with, and you have to understand their message, and this person might be powerful. I could say that, and in many cases that might be the case, but it wouldn't be the case in all the time, because there is such a psychological dimension to it, and that Pluto just might be some kind of psychological projection that you do need to incorporate it. But I don't want to say anything more on the matter. You need to think about it and work out how relevant that might be. Now, a softer aspect is the moon making a trine to Venus. Moon in Sagittarius making a trine to Venus in Aries. And that moon trine Venus in Aries is almost like the moon making a favourable aspect to the sun, because the sun and Venus are in mutual reception. And that moon trine Venus for you is, it's a very expansive aspect. It shows you what is possible. It shows you what you can do. And in terms of your creative self-expression, don't stop. Don't feel that your creativity can be bounded within particular limits. You could always go further. It's nice to think that you've got all the answers and you're doing something wonderful and you can stop. But no, you need to keep moving, and you need to keep thinking about new possibilities and consider where these new possibilities can come from. It might be about your own research, your own observations. It could come from other people. Venus is a very sociable planet, so moon trine Venus can be about people you maybe don't normally associate with, don't normally mix with, different background, different experiences, but you might nonetheless be able to learn from them. You don't actually have to physically meet them. They might just be people on the internet, people with YouTube videos or blog posts or whatever, but they're just offering you a different vision, and that should very much be welcomed. And that moon trine Venus does have a spiritual dimension, or at least it can have a spiritual dimension. And Venus can perhaps represent some supernatural force, a very benign supernatural force, a supernatural force that wants the best for you and is allowing you to tune into something new. And that moon trine Venus, Venus is a planet of art, and creating things, whether it's art, music, poetry, prose, whatever it is, you can create something of really high quality, which is representative of who you are at this particular moment of time, and the fact that you're able to tune into things which go beyond sort of the material everyday reality. So yeah, use that moon trine Venus and try to see, where it's taking you. Virgo. Virgo, the moon is in Sagittarius, and the moon in Sagittarius kind of sounds exciting, and yeah, it can be exciting. It can be exciting for all of the 12 signs, but the different signs experience Sagittarius in different ways, and with the moon in Sagittarius, you might feel that you don't actually have to go out of your way to experience that fire. You can actually experience that fire, right where you are. And there should be no great pressure to do anything. You can, you can create your own world. You can conjure up wonderful imagery and make it part of your own world without necessarily having to move anywhere. I mean, there are pressures though, because the moon is opposition Jupiter. So the moon opposition Jupiter can be about people with ideas, or ideas without the people, just ideas, things happening from the outside. They're happening, and you're supposed to respond, but how are you going to respond? And you don't really want to respond, and it's a little bit irritating. And the concept of irritation might be quite major today because of moon opposition Jupiter, moon square Mercury. It just feels that you're supposed to be doing something else. You're supposed to be somewhere else, and that's not necessarily what you would like to be doing. And so what do? It's important that you don't assume a conflict. Just because you're having to deal with things that you don't like, that they just feel irritating, doesn't mean to say you have to see everything in terms of winners and losers. And for your part, if you can be a little objective, it would help. Don't take anything too seriously. And if you have to go out of your way to do something, don't think that it's spoilt your day, and don't think it's something you need to get angry about. You do something. You didn't want to do it. It takes you 10 minutes, it takes you an hour, or however long it takes you. You do it and you just return. And then there's no need for any trouble, no need to worry about anything. But you mustn't feel that you need to be in control of everything. And you shouldn't forget that Mercury is still in Pisces, still very much in Pisces, and in your opposite sign. And so when Mercury is in Pisces, it's often a time when you have to take into account outside pressures, and at the very least recognize that they exist. And these outside pressures can appear to upset your equilibrium. It doesn't necessarily mean they will upset your equilibrium, but they could upset your equilibrium if you allow them to. And also you have to think about the extent to which you have to give ground, and that's especially the case if you're in relationships. Relationships are not 100% easy today, but they needn't be a major problem. You have to give perhaps a little bit of ground, at least in terms of recognition and understanding, demonstrating that you recognize and understand another person's point of view. And then that might be enough. And you just have to make sure that in terms of where you're standing, that you don't have to give too much ground. You don't want to have to move into an area where you don't know the rules. So if you stick to what is yours, to what you know and trust, you might have to go to the edge. There might be points where you're almost crossing the boundary, moving from the known to the unknown, almost but not quite. You don't actually want to move into the unknown. If you are moving into unfamiliar territory today, then yes, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage, but I don't think that is necessary. Libra. Libra, the moon continues moving through Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a sign that you feel pretty familiar with. You feel comfortable with the moon in Sagittarius, and you have sufficient freedom. You know, you can do to a great extent what you want, and you can say what you want, you can go where you want to go, and by and large, yeah, there shouldn't be too much of a struggle there. And the only thing is, in terms of the things you say, and the announcements you make, the arguments you put forward, it's probably important that you don't make sweeping statements. You don't confuse conjecture with fact. There is some danger, Libra, that you make a sweeping generalization, or you say something you've heard that it's true, you think it's true, but actually it's not necessarily true. And in that case, there is a possibility that you could make a fool of yourself. I mean, I'm not saying you will make a fool of yourself, but be moderate in what you say, and don't say anything and of a factual nature unless you're very sure. If necessary, you can check your facts, and that is especially the case if you're putting words down in writing. You think you know the answers, but you don't necessarily. So a little bit of research and fact checking today, might actually be quite a good thing, and could really help you out. And the moon, while it's in Sagittarius, it makes a trine to Venus. Venus is, of course, your ruling planet, and Venus is also strengthened by the fact that it's in mutual reception by exaltation to the sun. So moon trine Venus, I would see that as being a very helpful aspect. It's an aspect that is going to help you make connections, and you can, if you try, you can say things which other people will appreciate, and through the things you say, you can make other people like you. I mean, okay, I don't say make, but you can. And additionally, if we look at the positions of the planets from a heliocentric perspective, we still have a conjunction between Venus and Mars, and that Venus-Mars conjunction is separating. Now, actually, that's quite a good thing that the Venus-Mars conjunction, the heliocentric Venus-Mars conjunction, is separating, because it might mean that some of the pressure you've been receiving recently, perhaps pressure from another person, is starting to subside. And in relationships, if you are in any relationship, there is more room to breathe. And Mercury is coming along heliocentrically. It's making a trine to Venus, trine to Mars, or trine to Mars and then a trine to Venus. And Mercury helps smooth things along. It creates a point of connection, and it's a point of connection which isn't about one person having control over another. It's just people being connected and having things to say to each other, and that just makes things feel good. And so, provided you don't make sweeping statements that you haven't properly researched, then connections with the outside world should really work very well. And Also, Libra, don't forget yourself and what you can do. Remember, Pluto is in Aquarius, and Pluto's been in Aquarius, I think, since November the 17th. And, as you know, it stays there for a long time. And I understand that all those planets in Aquarius, these other planets of Aquarius in Aquarius have now moved on. But still, Pluto is there. And there are other factors in your chart to indicate that there are things right now that you are passionate about. Things you're passionate about them because you know they're important and you know they're meant for you, and you know you're good at them. And when I say good at them, I mean when those things are out there, they could be activities you can do well at, and you know this. And today you actually have an opportunity to demonstrate to yourself, how good you are at something. And you're helped now by the fact that Pluto is in Aquarius. Perhaps before, when Pluto was in Capricorn, it wasn't so easy. You tried your hand at something, but you didn't have the intensity to move things on. But now to move things on to the next level. But now things have changed. Pluto is in Capricorn, and there are other things going on to indicate that you really can take things to a new level. So, Libra, don't forget about all those lessons and opportunities that were presented to you when you had Sun and Mercury in Aquarius. Don't forget those lessons, because they are very real, and nothing has changed. And it just may be now, with the Sun in mutual reception to Venus, that a little bit of practice, a little bit of application is required. But it's certainly nothing to worry about, and it's an opportunity that you should relish. Scorpio. Just a reminder, Mars is really, really slowing down now. Mars is at 1703 Cancer, and Mars comes to a standstill on Monday at 1701 Cancer. So only 2 arc minutes until Mars is stationary direct. And remember, an arc minute is 1/60th of a degree. So if you don't know, you've got 360 degrees in a circle, and each of those degrees is divided by 60. So there's one sort of arc, just 2 arc minutes left before Mars comes to a standstill. And as I've already suggested, I think that Mars coming to a standstill, stationary direct, it is going to be good for you. It's something absolutely to be welcomed, and you may be feeling that something is coming to an end, and that a period of reflection, where you couldn't necessarily do everything you wanted to do, but that period is now close to being over, and you're now ready for something else. And underlying this, Scorpio, may be just a feeling that you want something else, and you're aware now of many of the things that had been holding you back and were preventing you from achieving your potential. And you may have just felt a little bit stuck, but now you know what's holding you back, and you also get an idea about solutions. There may have been various problems you had, or things you wanted to sort out, and and it was building up over the last year, over the course of 2024. But now it's all becoming clear, and you understand it, and there may be just a sense of growing relief. You get it, and you kind of now know what you have to do, and so it may even feel, Scorpio, that the hour of freedom is at hand. Okay, it might not quite be there, but it feels very close. And so, you do have a growing optimism. It's almost an optimism that can't be expressed because you're afraid of expressing your optimism, because that might jinx it if you were to tell people that you actually think things could be getting better. But I do think, Scorpio, that things are getting better, are about to get better. And I think Mars going stationary direct on Monday is something to be looking forward to. Now, on a more sort of mundane level, Moon is still in Sagittarius, and Moon is it's making a trine to Venus. That Moon trine Venus is a pleasant aspect. I think it will allow you to come over as being a pleasant person, and people are going to like you, and at the same time there'll be something about you that is very definite, and you won't be just someone who can just be forgotten. There's something very real about you, and it's going to be easy for you to tell people who you are, and what you've got to offer, and there can just be a nice sort of fairly low profile interaction where you can get closer to another person, but maybe not in a completely dramatic way, but it's something that you could take advantage of. But the Moon doesn't just make a trine to Venus. The Moon does make an opposition to Jupiter, and it does make a square to Mercury. And that Moon opposition Jupiter could have a financial dimension. And when you think about aspects involving Jupiter, you can think about taking things too far. Some aspect of your finances you could exaggerate, so you might reach a wrong impression. You might panic. That might be one approach. Or it might just be Moon opposition Jupiter. You spend too much money. You think you're spending this amount of money, and you end up spending more than you expected, more than you wanted to. And it may be easier to spend money than usual because of that Moon opposition Jupiter. But we do actually have a T-square. So you've got Moon opposition Jupiter with Mercury on the T. And so Mercury can represent a resolution. So Moon opposition Jupiter is a tension regarding money and material things, what you own, what you don't own, and Mercury is an answer. And perhaps what Mercury is telling you is there is a way to resolve an issue which has nothing to do with money. You might think that money is an answer, or maybe someone else thinks that money is an answer. You can solve something by spending money, buying something, handing someone some money, but that's not the way to look at it. Mercury is telling you, remember, Mercury is strong. Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. It might be in Pisces, which in its fall, but because of its mutual reception to Jupiter, that gives it a strength of its own, where it's supported by, well, it's not quite on its own because it's supported by Jupiter. But there is a way to do something which harnesses your creativity, allows you to be yourself, and you find a solution, and it's a very good solution, and it doesn't require any expenditure, or certainly requires a lot less expenditure than if you took the lazy approach, just throwing money at a problem. But if you throw some creativity at a problem, you possibly realize that money is not actually required. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, Moon, still in your sign, right in the middle of Sagittarius from a New York perspective. Okay, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, it's still at the beginning of the sign. But, with the Moon in Sagittarius, your fundamental attitude is positive, sunny. You believe things can happen, things can work, but you still have to deal with everyday challenges. And the moon in Sagittarius, it does make an opposition to Jupiter, and it does make a square to Mercury, and that could complicate things a little bit. So moon in Sagittarius, it very much wants to do its own thing. That's you. You don't need anyone's help. You've got everything under control. But however much you try, however independent you try to be, still outside factors make their presence known. And that could be in terms of other people demanding your attention. Or you might reluctantly realize that you can't do something unless you get some help from outside. So that is a way it can work. And the question is, what do you do about it? What is the answer to that issue if you feel that your way and other people's way is not really, we're not really jiving with each other? What do you do? Well, Mercury is on the T, so we've got a T square, moon opposition Jupiter, with Mercury on a T. So Mercury might represent a solution, and whatever issues you're coming about, especially sort of interpersonal issues or issues regarding outside forces trying to tell you what to do, trying to force you to do things that you don't want to do. Whatever those kind of issues, Mercury is about the mind, and Mercury is in mutual reception to Jupiter. So Mercury is not alien to you because of that mutual reception, and it's about your mind and it's about your thoughts, and just slow things down. That's the first point. Slow things down. Don't allow things to be in too much of a rush. Don't feel that decisions have to be made. Don't feel you have to commit yourself. Just slow things down, and always ask this question, what makes you feel secure? What is right for you in terms of your long and short-term security? Do think about that. And at the same time, don't be afraid of using your home and your family as a resource. Your home and your family are an important resource. And if you actually see things through the lens of your home and your family, then it may actually be easier to make decisions. And what appeared to be some kind of struggle might actually be no struggle at all. The answers may be obvious, and you'll realize what needs to be done, and you'll realize where the real support lies. And another thing to say, which I said yesterday, but I'm going to repeat it, and it is this, and it is in many respects a time, Sagittarius, when certain ties need to be reconsidered. It's a situation where you may have to say your farewells. I think I said that yesterday, but I would repeat that. You can't have everything forever, and some people, some situations, they're not doing you any good anymore. They are of the past, and because they're of the past, you shouldn't be afraid of loosening your ties. You don't have to be dramatic about it. So if you make a decision about another person and their role in your life, and you feel that they shouldn't have a role in your life, you don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to make a big announcement. You don't have to be rude. You can just, gradually change your approach and change your focus, and you can do it in a way that no one gets offended. But it's a slow reconfiguring. As and as some things move out, new things will move in. Capricorn. Capricorn, it's another day when I'm not convinced that a great deal has to happen. It really doesn't. And, there are things happening which other people are maybe obsessed about. They think it's important. They might like you to get involved as well. But it's a time, really, Capricorn, where you don't really have to get involved at all. And you can, just decide to pass on it. And you shouldn't overreact to what other people are saying or doing. Some people like to be dramatic, and they might like to make bold pronunciations, or they might like to give the impression that everything is falling apart, or that urgent action is required now, this moment. But I don't think so. I don't think that's the case at all. And in fact, Capricorn, if you were to get involved in the world and its turmoil, then I think your own equilibrium would be upset. And you might find yourself getting into a situation that you really you don't want, you don't need it. It's so unnecessary. And so in that sense, Capricorn, there's a danger that you take on a load of burdens, not just one burden, lots of burdens, lots of responsibilities. You take it all on, and it's too much, and things could go wrong. You could get yourself into trouble. You could even do yourself an injury if you go out of your way to help another person. Do not go out of your way to help other people today. You might like to, but I'm just not convinced it's worth the effort. You may not be as much help as you think you could be, and you also might find yourself doing something that you don't really understand. You're trying to be helpful, yes, but you do something, you don't get it, you don't fully understand it, and because you don't get it, you make a mistake. It's not your fault. You're trying to be helpful, but you still make a mistake. And it is not easy, and it just makes things worse. And so Capricorn, just be a sensible Capricorn. Do what you're good at, and don't allow yourself to be distracted, and avoid moral pressure. There might be a bit of moral pressure, being told that you should be doing something, but not really. You don't have to do it. And don't underestimate your own powers of explanation. You can tell it as it is, and you'll be very good at refusing things, turning something down, saying you're not interested, or saying you're busy. You'll be very good at doing it in such a way that sounds really very natural. Aquarius, you can have a fun day if you want. I mean, not necessarily a super fun day, but a fun day. Your social skills are relatively good, with the moon in Sagittarius, and the moon is actually making a trine to Venus, and with that moon trine Venus, you're going to be quite good at talking, telling people what they want to hear, and you will actually have a natural facility when it comes to listening and feeding back. And that's possibly connected with the fact that the Sun and Venus are in mutual reception by exaltation. The Sun is ruler of Leo, your opposite sign. So Sun in mutual reception to Venus, and the Moon making a trine to Venus just allows you to be very flexible in terms of what you say, and you can respond well, and you'll give the impression of being a fairly sympathetic person, even if you may not be particularly sympathetic. You may not feel yourself to be sympathetic, but if you're just there and you're talking, you're feeding back, that really is enough. And you don't have to do anything dramatic today. You shouldn't do anything dramatic today. You might be tempted to. The moon does make an opposition to Jupiter, and moon opposition Jupiter might encourage you to take something too far, and you might take a situation which should be easy, should be straightforward, could be a social situation, but you just put too much energy into it. You put too much of yourself into it. And if you put too much of yourself into it, it kind of goes wrong. And that's not what people want. People actually don't want super individuals, people who are very clear about what they are, what they believe in. People don't want that kind of person around. That's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So keep things at a fairly low level, and it is possible, with Mercury making a square to the moon and square to Jupiter, is that money may be a solution. And it's maybe a solution because if there is any conflict or disagreement or something doesn't make sense and you don't know how to resolve something, when you look at it in a financial sense and you actually ask yourself, well, how much is it going to cost? And what is the benefit? And is it worth it? When you look at it like that, the solutions can come thick and fast. In fact, it can become absolutely obvious what needs to be done. So money is not something to be avoided. And when you actually look at things in a financial sense, then you get clarity. One other thing, Aquarius, one kind of warning. Be careful on a physical level. You are possibly slightly more accident prone than usual. I'm not trying to scare you or anything, but just at the moment, it's not even just today, it's just this period of time. Maybe it's while Mars is about to go stationary direct, just be careful, don't commit yourself to anything that is dangerous, and don't take physical adventures or go on dangerous hiking trips or whatever. Just understand your limits. I think that is important at the moment. As I said, and it's not just about today. Perhaps it's over the next week or even 2 weeks. But I thought I should just mention that. Pisces. There are things at the moment that you do want, and you'd like to have them as soon as possible. But you do need a certain sense of perspective. You can't get everything at once. And if you try too hard to get something, whatever it is you feel you want, you could trip yourself up. And there may actually be a clash between what you feel you want and what you actually want. So why do you want something? It may be that you want something because of social pressure, or maybe you want something because you feel you should want it. And that might actually be quite psychological. It might relate to the distant past. Perhaps as a child you were brought up believing that something was important, and you continue with this, and right now you see a chance to get it, you feel it really matters, but the question is it really important? And is it real, and is it authentic? And authenticity could actually be important, and your desires need to be authentic, and they need to be in alignment with who you are. And that is something to think about, and it is a challenge, or at least it might be a challenge. And we can conceive of this challenge as being about the moon opposition Mercury. You've got the moon in Sagittarius. Sorry, not Mercury, Jupiter. Moon opposition Jupiter. The moon in Sagittarius opposition Jupiter in Gemini. Now, Jupiter is you, remember. Jupiter is your ruler. Jupiter rules Pisces. It's not Neptune. Neptune has an association with Pisces, but the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. And Mercury is square Jupiter, and Mercury is square Moon. So there is this T-square today, which I have been trying to emphasize when I've gone through some of the 12 signs. And very often when you have a T-square, Mercury represents the solution, and Mercury represents you. And it represents what is right for you. Especially right now as Mercury is in Pisces, Mercury is in your own sign, and it is in mutual reception to Jupiter. And by thinking through and talking through what is important, and by using not just your brain but your heart as well, you can just get a sense for what is real, what is a real desire, and what is just something that is just illusory. You don't need it. For some reason you think you need it, but you don't need it. And that might be the answer. And at the same time, do think about other people and other people's role in your life. Mercury is going to be on and off, making this mutual reception to Jupiter by sign for the next couple of months. And I say on and off because Mercury, it goes into Aries, then it goes back into Pisces because Mercury goes retrograde quite soon. And so do think about other people and how other people are pressurizing you, and if other people are pressurizing you. And it's probably the case that if someone is pressurizing you to want something that you don't want, or to do something you don't want to do, then that's perhaps a good sign that this person is someone who doesn't necessarily have your best interests at heart. And anyway, why do you need to bother with such people? There are people around you who really do understand you, and they understand what you need and what your best interests really are. And so maybe you have to make a few choices, and not everyone is useful. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the I Ching. And I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 26, the taming power of the great. So that's quite a mouthful, the taming power of the great. What does that actually mean? Is the great having the taming power, or is the great being tamed? And I think the I Ching is looking at it in terms of the latter. The great represents our own greatness, our own power. It can even represent our animal instincts, because the I Ching does use animals a lot in this in its interpretations of this. Certainly the Wilhelm translation uses the analogy of animals to try to explain some of the moving lines. And so we have a lot of power. There's no doubt about that. And so the I Ching is recognizing that. The I Ching is recognizing how much power we have. It's that raw power that is at the basis of our soul. It's the basis of who we are. It's the basis of how we project ourselves and how we're creative and how we live our lives. But if that power gets out of control, it just goes nowhere, or it takes us into areas that we really don't want to be involved with. And the I Ching, certainly the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching, is telling us that this is a time when we need to hold firm. And the Wilhelm I Ching says that there are three aspects to holding firm, and they are holding together, and they are holding back, and they are nourishing. So holding together means holding together with what we know and trust, and bringing everything together, making sure that we don't sort of shoot off on a tangent. We have to hold together with the people and perhaps with the environment that we really can trust. And then you've got holding back. That's a concept of restraint, and restraint is very important with this hexagram. We can't follow our animal instincts. There are things where we would like to move quickly in a particular direction, but we can't. It's not the right thing to do at the moment. And then there's nourishing, the taming power of the great. We need to make sure that our own security needs, our own needs for, literally we've got to eat to stay alive, and perhaps other people are reliant on us. That's possible. And so there is that third aspect to holding firm. And so that's what we should be aiming to do with this hexagram. And we have three moving lines. So the third line moves, and with the third line moving, it's about keeping control of the beast. And I don't think that's the inner beast. And the beast, it's actually talking about a lot about horses, actually, and the analogy of horses moving in a particular direction. I've never ridden a horse. I think I'm allergic to horses, but if you've ridden horses, it's this powerful, apparently, I don't know, it's this powerful thing moving forward with other horses, and you have to kind of be in control of this horse, apparently. Again, I don't know anything about horses, but you need to control the beast, and I suppose the beast has to make sure it goes in the right direction. And it's saying, yeah, we are in control. It is moving in the right direction. It is moving forward. And then the fifth line moves, and it's still talking about control. It's about maybe having a certain amount of restraint, perhaps focusing on ourselves. We might know we've got so much to do, there's so much we want to do, but we just have to hold back a little more. We just can't do everything we want to do. And in the process, we might to an extent be able to change some of our attitudes and be actually able to think about how we use our power and what the right way to use that power actually is. And then the top line moves, and the top line is the ending of the whole process. That whatever was holding us back is over. The problem is over, and we can start to move on. At least that's what the top line moves. But the thing is, the hexagram it moves to is hexagram number 60, which is limitation. So even then, there is some limitation. If you actually look at the structure of this hexagram, bottom three lines represent the lake, and the top three lines represent the abyss. So it's a very watery hexagram. But limitation, at least the lake is at the bottom. You see, if the lake was at the top and the abyss was at the bottom, then we'd get the image of all the water in the lake flowing away and being dried out. But because the lake is at the bottom, the lake provides some support, and that's perhaps this sense of limitation. We are by limiting things, by not going too far, we're actually making sure that we are actually holding everything together. Because holding things together was an important theme of the previous hexagram, which was 26. And so there are certain parts of our lives where we do have to exercise a little bit of discipline with limitation, and we can't be everywhere. And we're in a situation where we are showing some restraint, and we're not going too far, but it's all got to be natural. The I Ching does warn against limitation, which is excessive. When we really push ourselves, we try to be really tough, and when it starts to hurt, when limitation starts to hurt, there may be reasons when we should actually relax a bit. We're not trying to punish ourselves here with limitation. We're just trying to keep things in order, and we don't want to exaggerate. And now we need to think about Zelensky. Well, you don't have to think about Zelensky, but I mean, why not? I mean, Zelensky has been in the news a lot recently. I mean, he's always in the news, but he has been in the news because of his issues with Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump has gone so far as to accuse him of being a dictator, and Donald Trump has been also suggesting that that maybe a lot of money has been misappropriated, saying America has given Ukraine 300 billion, and where has all that money gone to? There have always been, through the war, stories about what's been happening to that money, but some of that money has gone into different people's bank accounts. There was even a story that some of the money the weapons sent to the Ukraine ended up in Mexico being used by the cartels. I mean, that's one view. And there was this town, was it Volchansk in the Kursk? No, it was in the Kharkov region, and the Russians sort of came across the border. They didn't. I don't think they still haven't completely controlled this town, but I think it was that town or some town close to it where the money was provided to create defences, but the defences were never created, and the implication was that someone had just pocketed the money. I mean, why waste money on defences when it can go into someone else's bank account? So there have been issues about expenditure, and Donald Trump has, of course, suggested that Ukraine should be paying the United States back. I never actually got that, by the way. Why should Ukraine feel that it should pay the United States back? Ukraine is working for the United States' interests, or at least it was during the Biden regime. But it was, if it's a proxy war, you're working on behalf of America. Why should you have to, if you're working on someone else's behalf, why should you have to pay for anything? I mean, that's my view. I think that's kind of, while I'm very critical of Ukraine, I don't see why Ukraine owes the United States anything, because Ukraine is just doing the United States' bidding. And it was after all after all America that engineered the 2014 coup, which got rid of the elected government. So it's kind of America's show in a way, but it's not entirely America's show, because America has kind of lost touch with a lot of the money it's been sending Ukraine. Anyway, I'm digressing. I wanted to look at the horoscope of Volodymyr Zelensky. So here is Volodymyr Zelensky's horoscope. I have looked at his chart a lot, so I'm not going to go into the whole chart in massive detail, but there are a few points that I need to make about this chart. Firstly, from an elemental perspective, he is a real fire-air person. He's got 3 traditional planets in fire signs: Moon, Saturn, Mars, and he's got 3 traditional planets in air signs: Sun, Venus, and Jupiter. And he's only got 1 traditional planet in an earth sign. So if we remove Uranus, Neptune, Pluto from the equation, these are discovered planets, they are generational. He's very positive. If you take the air and fire signs as positive, the water and earth signs as negative. So he is really very positive. He kind of likes to do things his way, maybe. And this contradicts the narrative that Zelensky is a puppet. I mean, a lot of people do say he's a puppet. He's not making his own decisions. There are forces that are just telling him what to do. For example, there are elements in the Ukraine which are sort of on the far right, nationalistic, perhaps draw their inspiration from Ukraine's fascist past, and that may be that may be having an influence on him. But I do think that to an extent he is making a lot of decisions himself. And I don't think that he's quite the puppet that some people make him out to be, with all those positive planets. And additionally, he has a lot of fixity, very fixed chart. If we take the 7 traditional planets, 5 of those 7 are in fixed signs. He's got Mars, the Moon, and Saturn in Leo, and he's got the Sun and Venus in Aquarius. So 5 out of the 7 traditional planets in fixed signs, and this may help explain how he's stayed in power for so long, and he hasn't really changed his image. He donned this green khaki T-shirt. He wore it everywhere. Hasn't changed. Not going to negotiate with the Russians. Same thing. His military strategy. Is it his military strategy? I think it might well be. He is very unchanging. He hates to lose ground, even if things are really turning against him. I mean, and then you've got this incursion into Kursk, this Kursk incursion, but it started at the beginning of August, and this he doesn't want to leave it. I mean, many military experts say that it's crazy. I mean, he's diverted so many troops away from for example, Donbass to defend this part of Russia that Ukraine wants to hold on to, and he's done it through everything. So that is quite fixed, and holding on to every little piece of ground, every village. And so that is his approach. It's not about falling back and creating new lines of defense, no flexible defense. And so that might be the fact that we've got him as head of state, and he's saying how it should be done. And there is this great fixity to him, which seems to be reflected in the Ukrainian character, and certainly in terms of the way they've been conducting their war. And there have been all sorts of forecasts about him fading away, being killed, being deposed, but some of his forecasts, made by me. I thought he wouldn't. I mean, I thought he wouldn't have lasted this long, but he has. And maybe that's a testament to his fixity. When you are fixed like that, and you just decide you're not going to change, and you keep going, that does give you staying power. And you compare him with other world leaders. Boris Johnson fell by the wayside. In Germany, Olaf Scholz, we've got an election on Sunday, he's going to go. Biden has already gone. So these other leaders who did support him, a lot of them have gone. And, of course, a key leader who's gone is Biden and the Biden regime. And that may be where his fixity is running into trouble. So he's made certain assumptions about the way the war is running and about the way the war is going and what he should do. But now you've got Trump. And what does he do? Does he have the flexibility to deal with Trump? I think the answer is no. And I think that is why he's getting into so much trouble. Or rather, why he's having this spat with Trump and, making statements about Trump which are somewhat negative. And Trump, Trump's the guy in control. And that's dangerous to have Trump as an enemy when Trump is the president. So I do think that Zelensky is really creating a lot of problems for himself. And there is also this question about how sensitive Zelensky is. And in terms of traditional planets, Zelensky has no planets in water signs, and he's got Uranus in Scorpio. But Uranus in Scorpio, that is generational. It's not a personal planet. So he has no planets in water, and so except for Uranus, and so he doesn't find it easy to read the room. He assumes everything is the way he wants it to be, and that means he sometimes makes a fool of himself, and he seems to be isolated, particularly more lately. Okay, at the beginning when the war started, he was everyone's hero, but things are changing, and so he's not adjusting to the situation, I don't think. And additionally, he has got a conjunction between the Sun and Venus. I think that Sun-Venus conjunction is really important. Venus is combust. Venus is a planet of relationships. Sun is in its detriment. And again, I think that Sun-Venus conjunction, Venus combust, Venus being a planet of relationships, how he relates to other people, that combustion is probably diminishing his ability to read the room. And that Sun-Venus is about to become quite important, as I will soon explain. And one thing about Zelensky, he has this lack of water, and parallels have been often made between Zelensky and Diem, and Ngodin Diem. Apologies if you've heard me make this comparison before, but I think it's a comparison that needs to be made. So Ngodin Diem had no planets in water, and he was the president of South Vietnam, and he was lionized by the West. Lyndon B. Johnson described him as the Churchill of Asia. Of course, Zelensky has also been described as the Churchill of Ukraine. So you've got this Churchill comparison. Yet Ngodin Diem couldn't read the room. He didn't realize how things were changing. So Ngodin Diem was a Catholic, and under his rule, the Buddhists got persecuted, and you had this big mess in 1963 when that Buddhist monk set himself on fire in Saigon, and so the whole thing was falling apart. And in the end, the Americans realized that Ngodin Diem was someone they couldn't deal with, and so the CIA were involved in a plot to get rid of him, and Ngodin Diem was eventually killed, murdered, executed, however you want to see it. And so Zelensky always has to be aware of the fate of Ngodin Diem, and especially now that Trump is in power, Zelensky really is surplus to requirement. He's no longer in America. He's no longer useful to America. Like Ngodin Diem. An interesting, parallel between Ngodin Diem, not as extreme, but Ngodin Diem did persecute the Buddhists, and of course under Zelensky, maybe Zelensky's not personally responsible, but the elements of the Orthodox Church in Ukraine have been persecuted, and so there is a parallel there. Not such a strong sense of persecution in Ukraine as you had in South Vietnam, but it's very much there. Of course, the other parallel is you had a change of presidency in 1968. Nixon became president, and part of Nixon's role, why people voted for Nixon, because they thought he was going to end the Vietnam War. And likewise with Trump, he promised to end the war in Ukraine. So there are kind of parallels between those two elections, 1968 and the election in 2020 in 2024. So that's Zelensky's chart, but this video was meant to be an update. That's Ngodin Diem's chart. Let's go back to Zelensky's chart. So this video is supposed to be an update. And so what has changed? Well, for Zelensky, he's just had a birthday, January the 25th, 1978. So he's just turned 47. So at your birthday, two things happen. Firstly, what happens is you have a new solar return. Secondly, you have a new perfected ruler. So annual perfections is a system that has become popular recently. So the idea is that you move the ascendant one sign every year. There's a similar picture in Vedic astrology when, in terms of Vedic solar returns, you have this point in Vedic solar returns which relates to the moving ascendant, and so he in terms of his solar return, well, here's his solar return. And I think this solar return, I won't say his solar return is disastrous, but I think it kind of describes some of the things he's experiencing. So this solar return for January 24th, 2025, for his 47th birthday, has Mars on the midheaven. So that's quite a powerful signature. It's quite an aggressive influence, Mars on the midheaven. Plus, Mercury is opposition Mars, and this might be what he says. He may say things which are not necessarily wise. Mercury opposition Mars. You don't say things to annoy Donald, do you? You don't say bad things about him. You don't insult the president of America, even if you believe you're in the right. Even if you believe that Trump is in the wrong, you don't do that publicly, and that might be how Mercury opposition Mars is working, particularly as Mars is on midheaven and Mercury is on the IC. Plus, if you're interested, there's true black moon Lilith rising and Chiron on a descendant. So you've got Mars, true black moon Lilith, Chiron, and Mercury angular, kind of making a sort of grand cross formation there. So I would have said that's a difficult solar return, but not maybe a disastrous solar return. And then there are the annual profections. So here is Volodymyr Zelensky's chart. So the way the annual profections work is you move forward a sign every year. And so when you move to a birthday that's divisible by 12, and i.e. your 12th birthday, your 24th birthday, your 36th birthday, and your 48th birthday, you have the same ascendant as when you were born. So if you on his 48th birthday in 2026, he will have Gemini as his perfected ruler, and you can say that Mercury will be his year ruler. But this is the year before. This is his 47th birthday. So we go back, and we use the whole sign houses, by the way, if we're going to use this system. And so we go back to Taurus. So it's Taurus that becomes relevant. It may be important, for example, that Uranus is opposition Taurus, although I'd be wary of annual profections as a classical technique. So do we really need to use a planet like Uranus? Probably not. So then we should instead think about the ruler of Taurus, and the ruler of Taurus is Venus. And Venus, as we know, is under pressure. Venus is in the 9th house, but it is conjunct the Sun. In fact, you could say that Venus is under pressure because it's not just conjunct the Sun, it's opposition Mars. So, and the opposite, you look at the opposition, the planets in the opposite sign to Venus, you've got Mars, Saturn, and the Moon. So I would have said that Venus is under a huge amount of pressure now. And so we need to watch Venus, and we need to watch transits to Venus. And so I think there is evidence in terms of solar return and his annual profections that his luck may have gone against him. And transits with Venus certainly should be observed. Now, assuming he lasts the next couple of months, and that is a big assumption, one should notice that he has got that Mars is now, it's retrograde in Cancer, it's about to go direct. Then Mars will go into Leo in April. And so on April the 18th, he's got a Mars return. And then at the end of April into May, he's got Mars opposition his Sun, opposition his Venus. And that opposition his Venus could be particularly important because Venus is his annual ruler. So if he survives until the next couple of months, then late April, early May, very late April, very early May, it might be a period that one really has to look out for. So those are a few thoughts about what's going on at the moment. And I know I should have perhaps been looking at other things, but I did just want to concentrate on those Mars transits that strike me as being important. And I just wanted to quickly make a few points about the connection between Volodymyr Zelensky's chart and that of Donald Trump. Clearly, the two men seem to clash, and so the question is, why is this the case? Sorry, one other thing I should say. Solar arc directions. So there is a solar arc direction coming up, which I think could actually be very serious for Zelensky. And so so that solar arc direction, and it basically relates to Neptune. So outer wheel we've got his solar arc directions, and then on the inner wheel we've got his natal planets. Remember, solar arc directions, we move everything 1 degree for every year. And so he was born with Neptune close to a descendant at around 1731 Sagittarius. Now, if we move Neptune 47 degrees, Neptune moves forward to 4 degrees 59 Aquarius. So Neptune is now getting really close to his sun, and then it will move on to making the conjunction to his Venus. So his solar arc directed Neptune is moving on to his sun and his Venus. And you associate Venus, Neptune with dissolution, and I think that beginning of that aspect of Venus is especially important because Venus is his annual ruler, if you want to use perfection. So the solar arc directions do indicate that problems could really be brewing here. And they sort of support what we know already. And when Mars is opposition his Sun and Venus the end of April, beginning of May, that could be when he's in real trouble, assuming he's still around then. And yeah, finally, I just wanted to look at Donald Trump and Zelensky to consider the connections between the two charts. So I will put Zelensky's chart in the. I'll put Zelensky's chart in the middle, and Donald Trump's chart on the outer wheel. And assuming Zelensky's chart is accurate, we've got his time. I've got his chart of 2 p.m. I mean, it's a bit rather a round time, but that gives us 21 Gemini rising. So that means that Donald Trump's full moon, because at 21 Sagittarius. Remember, Donald Trump was born on a full moon. His moon at 21/12 Sagittarius, his sun at 22/56 Gemini, is right on Zelensky's ascendant. So that really does hit Zelensky. So it's Zelensky. So Trump's full moon, in a way, is calling time on Zelensky, and now it's really very obvious. So that's one thing to say about Trump's chart, and I think that full moon really is very impressive. I mean, it's powerful. Other things we could notice is that Zelensky's Mercury is at 14 Capricorn, Trump's Mercury is at 8 Cancer. So that doesn't suggest two people who find it particularly easy to communicate with one another. And additionally, Trump has his Mars at 26/47 Leo, right on Zelensky's Saturn. So Mars is kind of hitting Zelensky's boundaries, maybe literally the boundaries of his own country, whatever. Yeah, that might be it. Trump has ideas about the way, in the end, Ukraine should be divided up. So that's Trump's Mars, and yeah, Saturn is the boundaries. Okay, Zelensky's personal boundaries, but because he's president of Ukraine, that might also be the boundaries of his own country. So those are a few thoughts about Zelensky. Sorry to go on about him, and I'll probably be returning to the subject. I mean, Zelensky, whatever you think about him, he is an important man, an important figure on the world stage. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.